and welcome to the Sasquatch Trail Runners Clinic series online. We are thrilled to be joined tonight by therapist Sarah Strong, coming to us from out in Colorado. Sarah, thanks for coming on the Zoom tonight.
Thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you.
It's going to be great. Tonight's topic is navigating a DNF. So we just had our big Wild Goose Trail Festival weekend. It's now about 2 weeks ago. And like any race, there were some folks who finished, some folks who didn't. So we had some people asking questions in our Facebook group about navigating a DNF, the post-race blues. So thought, let's put on a clinic, bring in a professional to chat about it and give us some good practical resources on what we can use. Whether or not we've DNF recently or it's going to happen at some point, everybody will inevitably not reach a goal. So Sarah, super stoked to chat about this with you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that we can talk about with this topic for sure.
There's a lot to unpack, but I want to make sure we can do a little intro for you first, because some folks are going to be tuning in and maybe they haven't caught our other recordings with you. So do you want to give an intro on who is Sarah Strong, and then we can jump into the questions?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Sarah Strong. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a clinical therapist. I've been a therapist for about 10 years. And I do primarily hiking-based therapy, so spend a lot of time out on the trails and using nature and movement as part of my therapeutic practice. And then I'm also a US certified ultra running coach and an ultra runner myself. I've done everything from 50 kilometers to 100 miles, which used to be like the max, and it's not anymore, but probably will be mine. And have had my fair share of DNFs as well as successful days out on trails. And so I can speak both from a professional lens as a coach, a therapist, and then that personal lens of having DNF myself.
I mean, I don't think we could ask for more for you to come with like every possible lens, bringing that to the conversation, which is so valuable, because sometimes you have people talking about stuff that they haven't personally experienced. So this is going to be great. So when we open up registration, we include the opportunity for people to ask questions. So Sarah and I have this all in a Google Doc that we're going to work through. No particular order on the questions. This is just how they came in through registration. So let's jump into it. First question is coming to us from Judy Heller. She is on the call tonight. Her question is, how do I reconcile having a DNF, recognizing that my body isn't built for the distance, and having FOMO when I'm at these events?
Whew.
I know, okay. a lot there to dig into.
There is a lot there. So first, let's recognize that these are three different things. And they will each require their own process and their own journey, and you'll kind of get through them or have acceptance around them probably at different points. I think let's start with reconcile having a DNF. Let's just start with that, right? And I think that next sentence where it says recognizing that my body isn't built for that distance, if that's after the DNF, I don't know the story. I know no history here. I would certainly encourage everybody to not tell themselves too much of a story from one DNF. And definitely not to tell ourselves too much of a story really soon after a DNF. And so I think there's something to be said for patterns. And when we've had some time and are kind of more level-headed, and we can look back, and if we say, my body's really telling me it's not cut out for this, right? That's one thing. But I do say, if this is first DNF, the first time at a distance, we want to be careful to not read too much into a single DNF. So I'll just say that. But when it comes to how do we reconcile having a DNF, I think the first thing that I like to do for myself is remember that Courtney Dauwalter DNFs and has on multiple occasions, and nobody was like, she's not the best anymore. Or I don't think she's really a serious runner, or her previous accomplishments are irrelevant, or Courtney, I'm done with her, she DNF'd, right? We're oh, she needed to DNF. she had a really tough day, something must hurt. She made the decision that she knew was right for her, and we trust that, right? And so if the greatest ultra runner in the world can DNF, then certainly I can, right? And so it sounds simple, but starting with just distancing ourselves from the experience. So it feels so personal. This is this failure that we've had, this thing that we haven't done. But when we look at it as an experience in the running community, on our running journey, we can really see that it happens very often. And this is one thing in our whole story. This is one experience in our whole story. So that, so when it comes to like, how do we reconcile a DNF, really starting with sort of that distancing. What would I tell a friend, right? What would I say to somebody else who experienced failure, right? And that piece of I experienced failure versus I am a failure is a really important reframe with a DNF. So we experienced failure. I'll give this example. The first time I ran a 100-mile race, I ran Bryce Canyon. I got third woman. The next year I ran Bryce Canyon. I DNF'd a mile 58, right? I'm the same person, and it had 2 different days on the same exact course, right? I was no less capable. I was no less of an athlete. I was no less of a great human on the day that I DNF'd. I just didn't have the day that I had a year ago, right? And I think that has helped. That experience has really helped me because of that. It's sort of the reverse of what happens to a lot of people where they DNF and then they'll go out and like take their course. I had this great experience and came out and then kind of had a terrible day out there, right? When I thought I was going to have a good one, frankly, because I did the year before, right? And that was hard. But my point being that that's why we don't tell ourselves so much of a story about one day. You know, I experienced failure on that day, and that's an experience that I had. That's not me. That's not the story of my whole life, and that doesn't define me as a runner. So I really think looking at the DNF as a point in time on our journey, and it's a place to learn from and a place to grow from and a part of the process. Yeah, so I think some of those like reframing, distancing, and really thinking about how we would support a friend through it. That doesn't answer the whole question, but it's a start.
No, I think that's awesome. I'm hearing kind of, it's a little bit of both getting out of your own head, but also reframing what is in your own mind. I never thought about bringing up Courtney Dauwalter and how she's DNF'd a whole bunch. Like that's such a great reminder that the GOAT, the greatest of all time, you know, so why are we, you know, beating yourself up if we don't finish a goal that we have? It's a great example.
I mean, truly, like, what would you say to her in that moment, right? You're not going to tell the things that you're saying to yourself when you DNF, right? You would never say those to her if she DNF'd. It would, right? And it's just amazing, like how quickly it is that we feel that shame, that blame, that doubt. Did I make the wrong decision? You know, all of that stuff. And I think really she normalizes that, like, you know, I don't have to destroy my body, because sometimes a DNF is a smart decision, right? And somebody might make it through and show us all that they could do it to the detriment of their long-term physical, mental, and emotional health, right? And so sometimes that DNF feels like weakness, quote unquote, and it's actually this incredibly strong decision to say, I got to call this because I know this isn't, you know, I know what's going to happen after the fact. And so I think, yeah, seeing other, you know, top tier athletes make those kinds of hard choices and then come back and then like the next year, you know, become the Triple Crown of the world or whatever, like, okay. And it's not different than Simone Biles, right? Who took a year off to support her mental health and then comes back and does this. And so I think that we're not going to be thriving 100% of the time, all the time. Like you don't just go from success to success to success to success, right? And we can get used to that and it feels good. But failure is actually a part of everyone's process. I mean, the best businesses, the most successful actors, entrepreneurs, athletes in the world, failure has been part of their journey. And so to be an athlete who experiences failure doesn't make you any less of an athlete. It's part of the story, you know.
Fantastic. That was great. We'll keep going with questions, a lot of overlap between some of them. But the next one is from Joe Brandine. He wants to know, what is the best way to support a runner who DNFs both in the short term and the long term? This is a great question, and coming back to community and supporting friends who are maybe going through this right now, whether it's Wild Goose or some other event.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great question. It's just like so wonderful for you to think of somebody else and like how you can show up for them. I think that question is a great place to start. Like, what do you need? How can I help? Being a place to like let them vent or talk. We'll talk probably a little bit more today, but processing a DNF is a really important part of getting through it. Just talking about like what went well, what didn't go well, what do I wish I could do over, right? And so saying to your friend, if you want to vent, if you want to talk through it, I'm here. Let me know how I can support. And then just in terms of like regular, so it sort of depends, right? If the injury's related to, if the DNF's related to an injury, we want to just like make sure, right, they're probably losing running, they're disconnected from their community, things like that. So checking in with them, making sure if they're not isolating. So that, again, checking in and just reaching out. How are you doing? Like that's really that, and just like talking about what's next. And yeah, I think you just create the space for them to come to you, but you don't have to go to them with it, because maybe they're not thinking about it, maybe they are. Like I don't think there's so much in terms of the long term other than just letting them know that you're there, and just reminding them of their strengths and talking a lot about the future, and like helping them see that is just like one blip on the radar and one little dot, and maybe not overemphasizing it too much.
Yeah, this is reminding me of our clinic that we had about mental health, when we were talking about like how you can support a friend who's maybe struggling with depression or going through a hard time. There's a lot of overlap, I think, between the two, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just being there, and certainly not giving advice like you should have done this, or maybe next time you could do this differently. It's like, yeah, not so much problem solving. They might want to do that in their processing, and I think you let them do that. And if they ask for your feedback, certainly you can give it. But I think it's much more that validating their experience. And if they are saying things like, it's so stupid, or I should have kept going, or I regret it, and there's like some negative stuff there that you're hearing, then I would really challenge it a little bit. Like at the time, it was the best decision. Or now, after you've slept and you've had all these things look different, but that wasn't what was the reality in that moment. Kind of helping them understand, or even just saying like, hey, you DNF'd, you're up there with Courtney, right? Like now you've got something in line, like alike with the greatest in the world. So helping just give them some positive, they're not like a toxic positivity place. Like we do want to let them vent, and like, yes, I understand you're so upset, like that, yes, like I understand the heartbreak and all of that. It's when you're hearing really negative self-talk that's like really where they're bad about themselves, or down on themselves, as opposed to just feeling sad. That's when we want to kind of step in and give them a alternative perspective that shines a little light on them instead.
Totally. Yeah. Trying to break that loop. Cause I know like when you're out there running, if you do drop, I mean, I've DNF before, you always, in the moment, I think can be so confident. Like I made the right decision. I'm dropping, this is it. And then as soon as the race is over, it's, oh, well, could I have gone more? Could I have gone more? So I think that's really helpful to have close trusted friends be able to kind of keep you logical with like, yes, no, you made the right decision in the moment with all the information that you had.
Yeah.
So, all right, next question. This is coming from Sarah Kool-Aid, who's also on the call tonight. She has the question of, I know that a lot of navigating a DNF/failure involves giving yourself grace, but how do you do this? But how do you do that / what does that look like specifically? Great question.
Yeah. This is a great question. So a couple of things come to mind. So first would be like really processing, getting at whatever's in your head out of your head. It's like a lot of like it's a mess up there, right? Everything's like, it feels like you know what you're thinking, but it's all complicated. So you put it down, or you can even like speak it into like a voice to text memo thing on your phone. Just get it out of your head, and ideally like written down in a way that you can look at it. And then go through and see if you, and maybe even as you're talking, you'll hear some of these things, but see if you can find some of those really obvious sort of negative, blanket negative statements, these black and white statements, these like sort of negative self-talk places, and try to find things that you can challenge. I think that in terms of how you give yourself grace, I do really think talking to yourself like you would talk to a friend is a really big piece of that. And catching yourself. So it's like a lot of noticing when your brain, like Kim was just saying with the spiral, like we need to get off the spiral. And that starts with having awareness about our thoughts and how we're feeling, right? So when you're on this spiral that's telling you not so great things about yourself, you're not giving yourself grace, your body probably is not going to feel great. You might have some anxiety, some tension in your body. So either tuning into those thoughts that are happening, or tuning into that tension in your body, because one of those is probably you'll have more awareness around one of them first. And just use that as an opportunity to cue to yourself, I need a reframe. I need a pause. And sometimes just that pause itself is enough, right? It's just, this thought is unhelpful. Like whether it's true or it's, we can go down that, but I'm not going to. I don't need to spend time with this thought. It's making me feel this way. I'm going to think about something else. And again, it's not this toxic positivity where I'm going to tell myself that like I was perfect and I ran amazing and like, it was the perfect day and whatever. I'm going to say like, I'm going to acknowledge the feeling that I have. And I'm going to say, thinking about this isn't serving me. So I'm going to think about what I'm going to do next Tuesday, or I'm going to watch a funny movie, or I'm going to like just distract myself. If the thought is just too hard to reframe, sometimes it's just, we really think it, we're in it. Right. And in the moment we can't reframe it, it's okay to distract. And then the other thing I would just try to pay attention to is like, are you thinking your feelings? So if you're really spiraling on a specific thought, maybe that's because you're not allowing yourself to express and sit with the emotions that are asking to be expressed. So like sometimes we have racing thoughts when really we just like need a really good solid cry, or we just need to like vent. It's sort of when I was saying process, like sometimes that is just helpful. We just need to get out. Like I've been thinking about this stupid race and how I did this at mile 7 and then I did this at mile 14 and why did I do that? And once I just scream that out into the world, those anxious thoughts kind of went away, because like I just had to like let everybody know how pissed I was about this whole thing, right? And if we're not doing that, we say I shouldn't be upset about it. I need to just move past it. Everybody DNFs, it's okay. But like really you're heartbroken or angry or whatever, you got to feel that first. You got to let that happen before you can work with the thoughts, because at the end of the day, that is a toxic positivity thing. If we're like, okay, well, we're going to change all of these thoughts about how that sucked to something great, but you haven't sat with how much it sucks yet, like we're not doing you any favors, right? So you got like, it's okay to be super upset about this, right? And to just like want to really cry and to really cry and let that out. And then to challenge the thoughts as they come up and say, I've sat with that, I felt that, and I don't need to think about it a lot more, right? So feel it to heal it, then name it to tame it. So we feel it, so like let our body experience it, express it, and then we begin to put words to it and to challenge it and to have a little bit more language and understanding around it.
Sarah, could we come back to you were just talking about, you reference how your body can hold a lot of tension, mm-hmm. and maybe feeling physically the effects of all of these feelings going on. I spoke to a runner post event who was having like this very abnormal amount of like tension and soreness that wasn't really related to the race physically. But I'm wondering if you could speak to that on maybe some practical exercises or stuff that a runner could do if they're noticing something like that, like physically feeling it in their body?
Absolutely. So, keep in mind when we're running endurance events, it is a physiologically stressful event, which means that it's producing cortisol and adrenaline. The longer you run, the faster you run, the more cortisol and adrenaline is being released into your body. So you get this huge influx of these intense stress hormones, and then you stop running, and the hormones are still in there, right? You might like shaking, vomiting, crying are things that happen when we have like all of this hormone in us that like comes out all at once. And so what we find, so sometimes it comes out all at once, could be this like intense thing. And more what happens is it comes out slowly over the course of the next couple of weeks in these like emotional experiences or difficulty sleeping, restlessness, right? You like your body can't feel comfortable, you can't sleep, irritability. And that's all cortisol and adrenaline stuck. And I mean, that's not all it is, but that's a lot of what it is. And so we want to think about getting the cortisol levels in our body reduced. So things like sleeping, which I just said is challenging, but prioritizing sleeping, legs up the wall, laying on a couch, literal rest is one of the best things. Deep breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing, that's really getting oxygen into your body, can help reduce cortisol levels. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system, which literally sends a signal to the body to reduce cortisol levels. Light movement, so walking, some gentle yoga, not like hot yoga and vinyasas, like stretching, gentle movement, crying can release cortisol, eating really well. So like all the same things that you're doing for self-care regularly during the year, you just want to do like more of those. And then just making that space for some, so like journaling, like I talked about, processing the event, talking to somebody, really just making the space for yourself to be able to feel. And I know that sounds really simple, but we don't allow ourselves to feel very often. Kind of, I said before, like that, like, oh, I shouldn't feel bad about this, or this isn't a big deal, that kind of stuff. We say that to ourselves. And when we do that, it prevents us from feeling that emotion fully, right? There's like shame around that kind of stifles the emotion. And I think really every time you can tell yourself, like, it makes sense that I feel this way. This is a real, and notice the difference. So we don't want to challenge the feelings, we want to challenge the thoughts, right? So it's not like I shouldn't feel sad, like 100% you should, like if you're sad, feel sad, let yourself feel sad. But when it's like, I suck and I'm never going to be able to run again and like, then we're going to challenge those thoughts, because those are actually related to the feelings. Yeah, may or may not be true, may or not be helpful for us to sit with, but it is helpful to sit with and express the feeling.
Fantastic. That was super helpful. Thanks, Sarah. All right. Next question. This is from Maria, wants to know, pain management medicine can only treat my pain, but not the cause. Running makes it worse. Running is my lifeline. What should I do?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot that I don't know in this story, right? But I would say, like, with the running is my lifeline piece and what should I do, I think this is one of the reasons that what we talk about, or what I try to talk about, is running is one part of our lives, and it is so good to have other parts of our lives and other things that other places where we can set goals and we can find community and we can explore our interests and just like find joy, right? And so it is great that running is that, and it's also great to explore other ways to find that. So I think one thing to think about is, what is my why behind running? What is the reason that I come to running? When I say it's my lifeline, how so? What am I getting out of it? Is it my mental health? Is it the social connection? Is it alone time? Is it time in my body? Is it movement? Is it competition? Is it time in nature, right? And really identifying what are the specific things about running that that make it such an important part of your life, and then how can we where else can we find those things? How else can we bring nature into your life if it's nature? How else can we bring competition into your life if it's competition? Where else can we find community, right? So getting to really what does running bring for you, and where else can we find that?
Sorry, just need to unmute there. That was great. Yeah, comes back to the why, which is hard to answer sometimes. A little bit of self-reflection. The next question is coming to us from Jennifer Parisi. Wants to know, do you have suggestions for positive self-talk when you've let yourself down and made choices that you regret?
Got a little bit of a cold, having kind of a coughing fit. Yeah, so regret is unfortunately a part of life, just like DNFs are. So first, I'll just like normalize and validate that it sucks and it is a human experience. So there's plenty to tell you about how to do it, because we've all been there before. So my big thing with what do we do when we regret something is self-compassion. So mindful self-compassion is really this, focuses on this idea of treating yourself like you would treat a friend, and of being kind to yourself, and noticing how the things in yourself that you have judgment about or shame about are actually part of the human experience. So anything when it's like, I'm alone in this. This is so hard. I'm so alone. Remembering everybody in the world at some time has felt regret, and feeling instead of, so the tendency and what can make shame worse is to isolate and to just feel so alone in our experience. And so the antidote to that, and this is really true with mental health, we've really found that connection and community is the antidote to most mental health stuff. And so that's why with depression, the first thing somebody does is isolate. And so we really want to focus not on I'm alone, but how is this being human, right? So I think, oh, I'm so terrible, I regret this thing. It's like, this is every runner DNFs, or, every person makes mistakes, and every person says something they wish they didn't say, or hurt somebody at some point, right? Like that is unfortunately the reality. The book Mindful Self-Compassion, the workbook, Mindful Self-Compassion workbook by Kristen Neff, is a great workbook that really just walks through some of these principles. It's pretty basic. It's a workbook, so it's like fairly basic in how they lay things out. But I think just the practice of offering ourselves kindness and forgiveness is a good thing for us to do kind of regularly. And this workbook really walks you through that process. And then in terms of self-talk, I've talked before about what would you say to a friend, but some other strategies. So just that distancing in general. So anything like, will this matter in a week, in 3 weeks, in a year? Like putting distance between ourselves, the thing and the time can be helpful. And even that voice, like assigning it to somebody else. So like you can, I really encourage you to like name your inner critic. They can be like a monster. They could be an actual person that you could create a character of somebody, give them a name, give them a whole attitude. Like, why are they so mean to you? Like, who is this terrible person who is just like hard on you all the time? Like, what is their deal, right? And when their voice is popping up, that's not your voice. That's that bully from 6th grade, and you do not need to listen to them because their whole thing is being mean to you. So I need to listen to them, right? Or that's my mother-in-law. I need to listen to her, right? Like whoever your voice is, it can be whoever it is. I love my mother-in-law, by the way. But that can be, so you just want that voice. So when we think about distancing, like actually separating that voice from yourself, right? When it's our voice, it's just truth. It's just the real thing in our head. But when it's that like mean person or, you know, the worry monster or whoever it is, that's somebody else. And then that's a thing we can respond to instead of just absorbing it. I'm kind of in two minds of this though, because like that was, and then I'm like, and then you stand up to that inner critic and you're like, I don't need to take this inner critic, whatever. Another way to think about it is like, most of our inner critics actually developed to keep us safe. And our inner critic tells us really mean things because it's just trying to help us succeed and they don't know how to do that. And so we can also like have a lot of love and compassion for our inner critic and say, hey, thanks for the heads up, but I think I got it covered. Or like, oh, I know you're trying to keep me safe here, but actually I'm not a terrible person, or whatever it is that you need to say. So I can, it's talking out of both sides of my mouth. I think both are effective. I think the longer I've been in the profession, the more I lean towards like the having compassion for our inner critic, because I think the more compassion we can show to all parts of ourselves, the better the better that works long term. But both are certainly well-known ways to respond to your inner critic, to be aggressive towards it and tell it off, or to show it some love and understand what it has to say.
I learn so much every time we have these clinics. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's so good. And I think we talked about that again, a lot of overlap. One of our previous clinics with I think it was the last one we did, talking about like when negative self-talk comes up during a race, and like this is actually like the precursor of like wanting to DNF and wanting to quit. And I'm remembering a lot of crossover from that and kind of handling it the same way. So next question we've got from Peter. Peter wants to know, after months of training, is it best to give yourself a break after DNF or to dive back into training and racing? And this is a great question. So we had somebody in our Facebook group ask a question about the post-race blues. And it was interesting to read through everyone's opinions because we saw both sides of this. Some people were like, sign up for a race. That's the best thing you can do. Get something else on the calendar. Where others, I fall into that camp of like, take some time to process and work through. But that's been kind of a change for me over the last couple of years. But would love to hear your thoughts, Sarah, on what you think for this.
I think it's an it depends. It's an it depends situation. It really depends. I would say, like, what's the reason for the DNF? Like, what happened? How many miles in? Like, if we're 85 miles into a run and we DNF, I don't love you signing up for 100 mile. That's like 4 to 6 weeks out and that much stress on your body that like, don't love it, right? So I think it's how long into the race were we? How much stress was put on the body? Was it a medical DNF? Or not? What were the situations surrounding the DNF? What shaped my body in right now? And then like, I think really it's important to have some serious conversations with yourself and like be really honest with yourself. Like, why this next race? Like, do I just need to get those digits? Do I just need to like check it off? Like, what is it about this race? Am I going for the experience of the race for the whole day to be out there and have that? Or I just want to I need to know I can do that number and I need to prove it to myself, right? Which like, okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you really want to have awareness of what your motivations are and what's driving you to that race, right? Like, and so I think that question, if I'm saying, well, I just want to get this, I want to get this distance, it's so important to me, then we step back and we say, okay, does that connect to the why behind your running, right? If the why behind my running is totally unrelated to new distances, then maybe jumping to this race and telling myself I need to get to this distance isn't actually true, right? It feels like that right now because I was so close and it feels important in this moment. But is that truly in alignment with what running means to me, how I like to show up to start lines, the kind of like, what is it about this race? Because I think a lot of times in those situations, it's like somebody picked a really specific race, they're jazzed about the race, they're jazzed about the race company, it's this day they've envisioned forever. And then when they DNF and they pick their next race, it's like, well, what's the closest one that falls in these categories on this date? And then they just pick any race, right? And then like, is it still doing what it was supposed to do and what you wanted it to do, you know? And I think those are like the things to think about. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I think it just requires some really important reflection on why do I feel inclined to do this next race? What, and asking the question like, yeah, do I like, yeah, I think that why this one, right? Is there one that excites me a lot more? Is it 8 weeks later or next year, right? And then why now? Where's the urgency? I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Where's the urgency? Urgency is a stress response. Urgency is anxiety, right? The sense of urgency creates anxiety in our body, and anxiety creates urgency. And so there's this sense of I have to do it right now. It's got to get done. And I think if that is an underlying emotion encouraging somebody to register, it's probably not a great reason to register. You know, I would resist that sense of urgency and really pay attention to like those other more organic reasons that you would sign up for a race to begin with.
Man, I can't tell you how phenomenal it is to have you speaking on all these issues, because I'm just thinking through, like, I have a great therapist, but she could not speak to the specifics of the ultra runner brain, which can be so irrational at a lot of times. So, yeah, it's just really valuable to have your perspective, because you are a runner and you understand kind of the mindset that we get into, where it's a sport of extremes, like, and it's really hard to just turn that off when the race ends, whether you finish or you didn't finish. So it's really, really helpful to talk through all these things.
Yay, good, thanks. I'm glad. I'm happy. I'm so happy. I do have to run and get my charger. I realize I don't have my charger for my computer. I'll be right back.
Absolutely. If you guys are on listening here, feel free to drop any questions in the chat if you've got them. We don't have to stick strictly to the script. We've got probably 2 more questions left on the list. We got one from Beth, who I think is on the call, and then another one from Dave Rose, who's not on the call, but looks like Sarah Kool-Aid dropped the link for the workbook that Sarah mentioned, which is awesome, the Mindful Self-Compassion. So thanks, Sarah, for dropping that in there. And she said, yes, I just ordered it. I wrote it down as well, so I'm going to try to snag that after the video. So looks like we got Sarah back here. Yes, Jeff wanted to know what that book was, so we got that covered.
Okay, I'm back.
Cool. All right, we got 2 more questions on the list.
Okay.
For, questions that were asked during registration. So the next one is from Beth. Beth is on the call tonight. She wants to know, is it discouraged to start a race knowing that you're going to DNF early on?
I don't think discouraged is the word I would use. I think it goes back to that question of like, what's the why? What's the why behind signing up for the race? And then so I guess for me, the question is, did the person register with the intent to finish the race and training didn't go well? And now they're like, well, I'm probably not going to be able to finish, but I'm going to start anyway. Or was it like, I'm going to register and I'm curious how much I can do, and the training has gone okay, and I know I'm not going to finish that much, but I was kind of always curious from the beginning, and we'll see what happens, right? Those are 2 different things. Sorry, I have to cough for a second. So I would say, if you're just curious about what, and you're like open to whatever experience, and you just want to be out on that trail and see what you can do there, yeah, go for it. I think if I had hoped to run 50 miles and training went terrible, and I'm showing up and I'm like, we'll see what today brings, I'm lucky to get 15, I'd say I'd be curious why we're showing up to that race. And yeah, I don't think I would discourage somebody from doing it, but I would wonder, is there not another run that you feel like you could finish, that would be a full experience, that would give you that finish line and that start line and allow you to celebrate the fitness that you have, and maybe give you a different experience. And I would also say it's okay to not run a race if you know, hey, the training didn't go well. I'm not going to finish this. I don't really want to just run 20 miles of a 50-mile race. Like, that's not fun. It's okay to decide to not go to the start line and to say, hey, I'm not prepared for this race, and so I'm not going to do it. Like, that is a totally okay thing to do. I think in the ultra running community, probably the running community in general, unfortunately, people don't do very often. And I think there's this sense of like, if I registered, I should do it. And I just think like, no, you registered for the race for yourself. And so if you want to run the race, go for it, but you don't need to just because you registered. And if it's okay to say no and to find something else to do instead.
Yeah, and I would throw in, this is a non-mental health related bit, but more from the race director's side. Something to consider too, if you're registered for an event that logistically would be challenging or dangerous for race personnel to get you out, try to think through those things as well. I'm thinking about events that are in mountainous terrain, probably more out towards where Sarah lives, Colorado, high altitude. I mean, we even have it here in the Northeast where you're getting out on really remote trails. So just thinking through that, if, you know, I think it's important for all of us as runners to have personal accountability and thinking through the risks that we're putting not only ourselves in, but also race personnel. So just thinking through that, if, you know, oh, I'm going to start this 50K, I don't think I'm going to get more than 10 miles, and 10 miles puts you in like the middle of nowhere. That can turn into a not so great situation. So throwing that in from the logistical standpoint, from a race organizer. Okay, final question we've got in the registration questions. This is from Dave Rose, wants to know, how can you keep focus when your body is falling apart and your brain says quit? How can you overcome that feeling? So assuming this is in the context of maybe leading up to dropping from a race with a DNF.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if I had that magic answer, I could be a bajillionaire. Or I don't know, there's not a lot of money in the ultra running world, but I could make some money. No, I think it's a really hard question, right? Because so much is happening in that moment, a lot of which is real and valid, right? Like your body is saying ow because it hurts and it's tired, right? And so I think, and I talked about this a bit last time, really these things start much earlier in the training process in order to be able to distinguish between pain you should be paying attention to and pain you can ignore, in order to be able to turn your attention away from unhelpful thoughts towards more helpful thoughts. You really have to be training your brain and your attention throughout training. So mindfulness, meditation, visualization, breath work are the things I recommend the most. And all of those things are going to help you in that moment to shift the focus of your attention. So, I mean, that's really kind of the crux of it is we're not trying to challenge thoughts in the moment, because like the thoughts are super real and valid. Like, this is dumb, ow, like, right? Those things are really hard to sit with. So it's really a distraction piece. Like, this is not a time when we're like, should I like weigh these out? Should I talk to myself like I talk to a friend? Or should I like consider all of the arguments? It's like, no, we need to just like trick our brain into thinking about something different. So that's a lot of distractions, music, counting, running from tree to tree to tree, asking your pacer to talk to you, singing out loud. And then another thing I recommend is just pausing. And that feels scary in the middle of the race, to take a break. Because we're running, and our brain and our body in that stress response place, it's like can be very much in kind of a panic mode. And so pausing, taking a couple of deep breaths, like we talked about last time, kind of doing some grounding where you're looking around and kind of getting into your environment. It's really simple, sounds silly, and it is simple, but it can just be enough to just get your brain kind of like Kim was saying earlier, like off of that spiral and onto a different track. So all of that is only going to be helpful if you're working on it and training your brain during training, so that in those moments, A, you think to do it, and B, when you do it, your brain knows what's up and has some kind of automatic responses in place.
Yeah, and if you didn't get a chance to listen to the recording from our last clinic, there's so much good information in there. And Sarah also provided links to her website where there are some really great resources that are available. One thing that's striking me about our conversation is that if you did DNF due to some, mental issues, this can be improved upon with skills and practice, like Sarah's saying. And that was really kind of the big takeaway from our previous clinic on mental strategies, is that what Sarah just said, it needs to be months and months and months prior and a part of your training so that you can utilize it and not, be scrambling at the last minute. So with that, I do want to, before we conclude, Sarah, if you could please share where people can find you online and some of those resources that are available, and just how people can reach out to you if they have questions or want to do some work with you.
Yeah, so probably the best place to find me is Instagram at the Trail Therapist, or just the trailtherapist.com. If you go to the trailtherapist.com, there'll be a mental prep page, and that'll link you to like my workbooks and my courses. And if you're in Colorado and interested in therapy, the website will also have that. And then also I do like individual mental prep stuff. So if you're looking for more of like a it's like for example, if there's been like a specific barrier that has led to DNFs historically, or like there's a specific fear, or you're just looking like, what are the strategies I need? I definitely do one-to-one work to help people build through their season to kind of get to race day with all of those skills. So all of that you can find at thetrailtherapist.com.
Awesome. And you're also doing some webinars, right, that are linked on there?
Yes, but yes, I think I don't have any listed right now, but yes, I've been rolling some out, and I've got the one coming up, or some courses coming out soon that are all this like mindfulness, breath, feel, and it's like, I think I said this to you before, Kim. I hear myself, and I sound hokey to myself when I'm like, breath and sensations and feeling your body, but it really is the core of what we do. And so I've made this sort of like science-based guide through how to do those things that is like, it's got that hokey bent because that's part of what we do, but it's so grounded in science, and I think I'd make it accessible and like approachable for people who maybe aren't so comfortable in that the mindfulness world that we like see on TV or think of as that culture.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it might sound hokey, but then I think we can all maybe ask ourselves, well, if what we're doing right now is not working, maybe we should try something else.
Absolutely.
So Sarah, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, as always. Man, I'm hoping we can do this throughout the year and really program. I know that was something my team's talked about we've done a lot of debrief from the Wild Goose, and a lot of these clinics kind of came together last minute. So we want to do this programming kind of like a clinic once a month leading up, where people can really get plugged in, especially the mental strategies. Like, it's tough. We do the clinic like a few weeks before Wild Goose. So I think offering that, months in advance would be really valuable for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would. Yeah. And please like send Kim your questions too. Like if you're, you don't want one of my courses, or you don't want services or something, but you do have questions, or there's anything, like definitely you can communicate through Kim and or like let her know ways that I can show up to support you all, or topics of conversation that would be helpful for you all. Because these are great, and I love the questions. Keep them coming.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this webinar series, and we appreciate you being here and joining the chat. So until we see you again, keep it squatchy.